Hello and welcome to the Academy of Powerful Caregivers presented by Kevin Shorter. This is Module 1, The Motivation of a Caregiver. Today's lesson is How to Give Lasting Help.
Hello and welcome to the Academy of Powerful Caregivers. I'm Kevin Shorter, and you made the great decision of joining this first module. This is the first lesson. The module is the motivation of a caregiver, and this lesson is how to give lasting help. And we came about this to give you, as powerful caregivers, to really enhance the ability for you to stay in the game long term. We believe that you have something to give, you have something to offer, not only to those people you're working with, but to the world. And to be able to enhance and to build into you is really the goal of these lessons. Originally, we started this in order to help out our ministry and the thing that we're started. We have a nonprofit in China to help out with teenage orphan girls. They come out of the orphanage around, well, technically they can come out at 18, and sometimes they come out earlier because of they can't be adopted anymore. So somewhere in between 14 and 18, they can come out of the orphanage. And we wanted to be able to help them, give them a place to live, give them a place to work, and help them transition from that full-time, someone's looking after them, to life on their own. And really in the midst of that, to be able to help them also to be protected from the traffickers who've been preying on those orphan girls, bringing them into prostitution and other things. So we wanted to bring in workers that would have a culture that will be powerful caregivers. And as we've come up with this training, we realized that there was some things in it that was really beneficial for the body at large, for a lot of different people, not just people who are working with orphan girls, but really for anyone who's doing caregiving. It could be, you might be a nurse, you might be someone who's a social worker, you might be a teacher, a parent, anyone who really cares for other people, a pastor, or a missionary. It doesn't really matter. As you're given of yourself, there's that tendency to run out of what you can give to other people. And so that's really what we're trying to do, is to maintain that motivation so that you can always give to other people. So we don't want to see any burnout amongst the people who want to give, because you as a giver, you're the lifeline of our society as a whole. You're the one who's making something that's worthwhile, something that's lovely, something that's excellent, that's allowing life to come into other people. And the more that we can maintain our source in all of this, the more that we're going to create life into other people. And we actually saw this when I was in China. I had led a group of men, and the idea is really to encourage one another, to share the struggles and different things going on. And one of the things that came up with several of them who had been there long term, and probably 10 years or more, was that they started to notice that they hate Chinese. Not the language, the people. After giving of themselves for a long period of time and not feeling the reciprocation or the appreciation from those they're trying to target, they got to the point where they just said, you know what, I don't like this. And they started then focusing on the things that are different from their culture, they're different from their likes. So just different things. It's like, oh, I hate when they do this or when they do that. And they start focusing on that, and then they lost their motivation. They lost their heart. And that was one of the reasons why we had the group in the first place, so we can reorient each other back to the heart of what we're there for. And so that's what we want to do with this lesson too, is to reorient the heart to maintain the motivation for long-term care. Because you're only a powerful caregiver as you continue to have that heart. If you start losing heart and you just start going through the actions, you're no longer powerful. You're just doing a job. So going back to why we even started this in the first place, because we have a nonprofit in China to help teenage orphan girls. So if you think about what's going on with these orphan girls, when they leave the orphanage, they have very limited education. maybe probably about 12 years old when they stopped. And so in America, anyhow, that's around a middle school education. So there's still a lot more education that other people coming out at 18 would have had. And then they're trying to find jobs and going up against applicants who have college degrees. And they barely have a middle school education, so they're having a hard time finding jobs. The market is actually overrun, so there's a lot more applicants looking for jobs than places to hire them. So they end up not finding jobs, and then since they don't have jobs, they're no longer in the orphanage. They end up on the streets, and on the streets, and they're vulnerable to people coming in and offering them money to sell their bodies. And so you see also with these orphans, they just don't have anyone looking after them. They have no one who's caring for them. And so they're feeling like they're not of value, of worth. So you look at some of the obvious needs. They need some money. They need a place to live. If you give them a job, then it builds up their self-esteem and care. But if that's all you're looking at, you miss some of the underlying things that are going on. And so some of those is that orphans feel rejected. They feel like that people always leave them. There's nobody's going to stay around, and they feel like that somehow they're inherently bad, and that if people stick around long enough, they'll find out that that as an orphan they're inherently bad, and they're going to leave them as well. And so sometimes they'll even try to do things that they know will get them rejected. And so they almost go back and pin it's like, okay, well, they rejected me not because of who I am, because I did that. And that's a lot easier for them to accept than to think that they were rejected for who they are, because they already feel that way. But as a caregiver, we want to be motivated. We want to love them, and then we start seeing their rejection, what we feel like them rejecting us, and it causes us to want to pull back and not to give the care and the needs that they have. And but that's just at the moment when they actually need it more, when we need to actually pour on more of our care, more of our service to them. And so being able to make sure that we know what our motivations are as we're going into will keep us continuing to give care even when we're facing rejection back. If you want to see lasting change, and for this particular lesson, how to give lasting help, then you want to address the heart issues, not just the felt needs. So imagine, for example, you have someone who has a gambling problem. Maybe it's a friend of yours, maybe it's a family member, and you want to help them. Say their gambling leads them into debt, and so the felt need in that situation is they need money in order to pay off their debt. So if you address that felt need and say, here's some money to get you on your feet again, what is the likelihood of them all of a sudden being better, and that really addressing their need and never going back into a bad situation again? Probably not likely, because they haven't addressed the gambling problem. All you've done is address the financial problem. So some of our desires for helping people is not just to take care of the felt needs, even though the felt needs are important and they need to be addressed, but even looking at the underlying issues further on that's causing these things to replicate and move on. As we're doing this study, this whole, not just this module 1, the motivation of caregiver, but even the whole lesson of the Academy of Powerful Caregivers, we're going to be looking at it from a biblical standpoint, mainly because I'm a Christian, and so that's where I get my motivation from. And so if you are not a Christian, you're welcome to participate, but just know that there's going to be a lot of examples that are going to be biblical, and it'll be coming our source of how we're going about it. You will find a lot of things that you can take and apply to your own life, even if you're not a believer, not a Christian, but just know that that's where we're coming from with this academy. With that said, though, as Christians, a lot of times we go into serving others, and we want to throw the gospel into everything that we do. It's almost like that, and we want to help the homeless, and so we create a soup kitchen, we give food out, And then every time we serve, we're going to give out the gospel. We're going to share the gospel. And it's almost like that's needs to be part of what we do. But I just want to say the people we're serving, we're caring for, it could actually create a mixed signal for them. What it can do is like it could tell them that they're just a project to you, that you're just trying to get them quote unquote saved, but you don't really care for them as a person. And yes, you're meeting their need and they appreciate that, but they just look at it as like, well, you're just doing this because you're trying to earn favor with your God and you don't really care about me. Or the person would say, if for us as we're working with the teenage orphan girls, if we feel like that they have to become a Christian in order to be a part of our program, they might look at it and it's like, well, again, you don't really love me unless I become a Christian. Or if I don't, so I will become a Christian just so I can feel the love, or I will say the words but not really have any heart change because fear that you'll leave me if I don't do this. And so it actually creates an unhealthy pull for people and an unhealthy view of God, where God just loves everyone. He allows the rain to fall on both the just and the unjust. He just wants to continue to pour out his love in a way to, in his kindness, overwhelm them with his love, where they will then come to him. And so a lot of for us as well, as a Christian, we want to overwhelm people with our love, whether or not they come to Christ. Yes, it is a desire, and we feel like that. We want them to. We feel like it'd be good for them. But it doesn't mean that that's how they're going to receive our love. And the thing is also with that, it's like a lot of times we see someone become a Christian, and then we put them into this program. We have to study the Bible, memorize Scripture, pray a certain amount of times. So maybe even go out and share your faith. And then what it does is tell these people, it's like, okay, this is what it looks like to be a Christian. This is what it looks like to earn our love. So now you not only do you have to become a Christian, now you have to memorize this set of verses. You have to do this kind of study. You have to do this amount of Bible study each day. And so again, what it does is it teaches them that in order to earn God's love, you have to do certain things. And if you want to earn our love, you have to do certain things. And so if someone, for whatever reasons, maybe they're not a good memorizer and they don't get the verses down, are you going to reject me? Are you going to leave me if I don't do this right? And so it creates an additional stress in that person for the service you're giving. And so we want to actually not to say we don't want to tell people about Jesus. We just don't want that to be such a focus that they mistakenly think that that's the only reason you're doing it. You're only doing it in order to convert me. You're not doing it because I have any value in and of myself. And that's what we want. What we want to do is, as a powerful caregiver, is actually we're giving them and releasing people into all they're created to be by telling them that they have value and love already in them, and then we're just trying to release them into all that's already there. And so we will go into this over the next 10 lessons, 11 lessons, to show you how to release that power within people and how to maintain that view of them throughout this time. And it's amazing to see people come alive through some of the tools that we're given in these lessons. And not only tell you the truth, not only in seeing other people come alive, but even as you start realizing how other people come alive through it, even you are starting to believe better truths about yourself. And so that's actually creating you to be even more powerful as a caregiver. And so we're super excited about what we're going to be doing as we move forward. Because in reality, there's a longing in each one of us to be loved for who we are. And not just for what we do, what we bring, how we respond, but who we are. And if we start loving people for who they are, and start seeing people for who they are, and seeing how they were created to be, and calling that out in others, and people start actually responding to it. Each of us really, if you look at our own lives, the people who influence us the most are those who believed in us the most. And as we want to influence and serve other people, then the natural understanding is we're going to have to believe in them and actually have hope for them, hope for their future, hope for what they can do and what they actually could bring, and believe in them and calling them out and encouraging them along the way. And that's how we give lasting hope. Because in reality, information is not going to make any transformation. It's that love, that deep longing love, is going to cause heart transformation. Knowledge can puff up, but love transforms lives. And so as we look into this and going forward, we're going to see how we can transform lives. Let's look at Paul. Paul in Thessalonians, he talks about how he gave his care, and he gave lasting care to the believers there. And so we'll look at this in chapter 2. You know, brothers and sisters, that our visit to you was not without results. We have previously suffered and been treated outrageously in Philippi, as you know, but with the help of our God we dare to tell you his gospel in the face of strong opposition. For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts. You know we never use flattery, nor do we put on a mask to cover up greed. God is our witness. We are not looking for praise from people, not from you or anyone else, even though as apostles of Christ we could assert our authority. Instead, we are like young children among you. Paul's saying that serving people is not always easy. He says he faced opposition, and it's like strong opposition. If we look even at, obviously in Acts, we see lots of times where he faced lots of opposition. He was even stoned, which people thought he was dead, and dragged him outside of the city, and he came back in, of course. And you see that strong opposition being rejected in a lot of places, but he continued on. And serving others, sometimes we'll face rejection. But the other thing that's interesting is sometimes we try to encourage or force people into what we believe is right for them. So we know that this is right and good, so we're gonna push or coerce you into that. But Paul says, no, I didn't try to coerce you. I mean, he didn't use strong words or impure motives. He just lived his life out. And that was actually the next thing. He says that the praise of men is a strong lure. I mean, it's like, I didn't seek flattery from you. I only tried to please God. And actually twice he says he did not seek flattery from people. And so you see that he was just genuine. And as we want to help other people, our genuine heart and love for people as it comes out is going to have the most powerful effect on others. And the last part of this section is Paul said he was like a young child. And as you look at a young child, it's like, again, this idea is there was purity, innocence in him. He was genuine. He was not trying to put on a false pretense, but he was just being who he was. And because he was being who he was, they saw who he was and saw the effect of the gospel in his life and wanted to actually receive it for themselves. He goes on in chapter 2. Just as a nursing mother cares for her children, so we care for you. Because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. Surely you remember, brothers and sisters, our toil and hardship. We work night and day in order not to be a burden to you, or anyone, while we preach the gospel of God to you. You are our witnesses, and so is God, of how holy, righteous, and blameless we were among you who believed. For you know that we dealt with each of you as a father deals with his own children, encouraging, comforting, and urging you to live lives worthy of God, who calls you into his kingdom and glory. The first point here is he was like a nursing mother. The wording is like he was holy, righteous, and blameless. So he was pure, he was caring, he was tender with the Thessalonians. And so he realized kind of where they were, and he just continued to pour into them everything they needed, giving them the nutrients and the care, because he cared for their growth and realized that on their own they would not be able to get what they needed. So he was being very tender. Not to say that on their own the people were serving like get what they need, but we want to realize that, and they've got themselves a lot of times gotten themselves in a problem. And we're trying to help them, whether they themselves or someone else. Like the orphan girls, they didn't get themselves in there. But they had a life of teaching them this is who they are. And so that's how they're going to act out. As we try to give them life It's going to take time for them to transform their mind in a way that they start realizing, no, I do have value. I do have worth. I do have something to give. And so we have to be tender and caring for the long term for them to be able to receive that and start to believe it for themselves. As we also look at, Paul said he didn't want to become a burden to them. So it wasn't a job. But this is who he was. This is how he loved them. And he just did everything he could not for them to think, okay, he's just doing this in order to get a paycheck. And not to say you can't get a paycheck for doing service to others. And for most of us, that's how we make a living. In the Gospels, it also talks about, or the New Testament, it talks about that the workers are worth his wage. And so in the Levites, they lived off of the provision of the rest of Israel. And so you see that serving others, I mean, you can get paid for it, but if people think it's only your job, it's actually going to become a hindrance for them to be able to receive what you're giving them. And so we want to try to do our best not to be a burden to them, but realize at the same time, how we're going to take care of ourselves. And that's a different issue. But for Paul here, it wasn't just a job. And I think for anyone who's serving it, you can get money and you get paid, but it shouldn't just be a job. It should be you're serving them for love of that person. And so actually, next thing, he's like a father. So we got a mother and a father in the midst of this passage. And so he's accompanying the full parenthood. And so the father, it says that he was encouraging, comforting, urging. You see, it's like he's calling them up to be everything they were called to be. He's not trying to replicate himself in the Thessalonians. He's trying to call them out to be everything that God called them to be. Because a good father is not trying to replicate himself in another person. He's trying to make his child to be spectacular as a person and everything that they were created for. And sometimes that calling in them is not to be just like the father, but it's to be unique as the son. And so as a father, he's urging, he's comforting, he's encouraging them to be all that they were called to be. And finally, there's a last section of Thessalonians. But brothers and sisters, when we were orphaned by being separated from you for a short time, in person, not in thought, out of our intense longing, we made every effort to see you. For we wanted to come to you. Certainly I, Paul, did again and again, but Satan blocked our way. For what is our hope, our joy, or the crown in which we will glory in the presence of our Lord Jesus when he comes? Is it not you? Indeed, you are our glory and joy. So we see here that Paul is reassuring the Thessalonians of their place of affection in his heart. He says that I wanted to come to you. We were separated, but I tried over and over again to come to you. That you're so dear to me. You're precious. And so, again, as we're serving people, it's not out of, okay, you're a project, but it's that because they hold a place in your heart. And so you just kind of, how are you going to continue to care for them in that way? And then lastly, Paul says that they are his crown, his joy, his hope, that it's, and even to the point of being what he's going to glory in the presence of Jesus with. And so when we actually serving other people and we're loving other people, their change, their transformation, and their reception of our love is our crown before the Lord Jesus, because he called us. He only called us to two things. He called us to love God and to love others. As we look at how to give lasting hope, there's several different things we went over, and obviously a lot of us in Thessalonians. But I probably pulled out six things here. One is that our love must be sincere. People can tell when they're a project, so just be sincere with your love. Second thing is to focus on to honor God and not to praise a man. So you're doing it to get God's satisfaction and God's reward. Now, he's always pleased with you, but there's some things that bring him joy. And you bring him joy, but then there's more joy you can give to his heart. Obviously, there's a reason why Jesus came to die, and that's to reconcile the world with the desires of God, the reason of the first creation. And so as we love people, we're actually bringing healing, hope, and salvation into their lives, and that's bringing joy to God. The third thing is we're not correcting behavior, but engaging God, God's heart through love. And so as we engage God's heart for these people, we're not necessarily focused on behavior. We can address the behavior, but just we focus on the heart issues, the behavior naturally works its way out. It's out of the overflow of the heart the mouth speaks, but it's also over the flow of the heart that our actions happen. So when we look at sin, it's not necessarily, hey, you did this and this, and it's like, and that we're trying to get that away. It's really those heart issues what drove those things out. That's why when Jesus said, it's like, you heard it said not to murder. Well, I say, if you just tell your brother I hate you, then that's the same thing, because it's a heart issue involved of hatred. Even though the action might have been murder, there's a heart issue involved. Number 4, you let people see the real you so that they will see Christ in you. Christ is in you. As a believer, he's there, and as you completely live out who you were created to be, people will see that. And even if you're not a Christian, to tell you the truth, the greatness God's put in you is actually going to release God's glory out as you live that out. I believe that you'll live it out more as you get connected and allow Jesus in. And obviously, there's greater rewards also with the connection with the Holy Spirit and eternal life. But as you just be yourself, then you're actually releasing God's glory, because that's the greatness of God's put in you. And number 5, you lead people into their destiny, not your vision of their destiny. So you're not creating more disciples that look like you. You're actually creating more people who love the Lord and are released in who God created them to be. And number 6, stay true to them even when they doubt you. So, if you can keep your love on in the midst of all that, then you're actually going to see people released into all that God's called them to be. So as we look at this can be a framework for how to give lasting hope, and lasting help. And as we move on, we continue to look at how we're going to do that for the long term. So as we close for today, this lesson, I want you to take time to think of 2 things. What are 2 things that stood out to you? What are 2 things that maybe God has imprinted into your heart and your mind? It's like, okay, I want to think about these more. I want to remember these 2 things. And it takes some time to write those down. Journal it somehow so you will remember what it is, and trusting that God is speaking to you. And He wants to continue to talk to you about these things as you work through and let them linger in your heart. We have a book that goes along with this module. Feel free to look it up. In that book, it is explained differently than we have in these lessons, but also in the end, there's some questions you can go about and to interact with. Those questions are actually to allow you to, to allow this truth to come out more into your own heart. And so you feel free to connect with us at APC at josiahscovenant.com, and we'd love to connect back with you and hear the things you're learning and share with us so we can continue to enhance and improve these lessons. Thank you, and have a great week.
We hope you enjoyed this lesson from Kevin Shorter on the Academy of Powerful Caregivers. If you have any questions or comments, please send them to apc@josiahscovenant.com. Be sure to check out the next lesson on how to trust in the goodness of God.